Spoiler warning. The following discussion will contain spoilers. We recommend checking out the movie first, then coming back to hang with us. But if you don't care about that, glad to have you here. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Review. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And we are The Reel Movie Guys. On today's episode, we'll be reviewing Moneyball. Thank you again for joining us for Real Sports Month. This is a month where we take a look at some of your favorite sports movies you may or may not have seen. Oakland A's general manager, Billy Beane, successfully attempts to assemble a baseball team on a lean budget by employing computer-generated analysis to acquire new players. Moneyball is a very interesting movie, I will say. Not something I think I would have gone out of my way to watch prior to this series that we're doing. It's about, the mechanics behind the scenes of baseball, trading, assembling teams. John, why don't you go into a little more detail about that? What this movie essentially is about.
I mean, the essential this movie is about is it's almost like an inside look into a baseball organization and how they conduct business. So with this team, with the Oakland A's, they were conducting business in a different way where they were trying to just use pretty much computer statistics. They weren't looking at players' names or players. They were looking at pretty much just players' stats and what they wanted. Right. So what they wanted from players was to get on base. They didn't care how they got on base, which way they got on base, or how many bases they got, as long as they get on base.
Right.
So they were pretty much trying to pay a certain amount to a very under a salary cap that they can afford to get players in here that would just get on base. So instead of having guys like Jason Giambi and Johnny Damon, which at high prices you'd have to pay for these guys, they can try to get 3 or 4 players to take over that position, but can get the same production out of bases as they could. Not home run specifically or RBIs, just on base percentage. Right. That's what the main key that they were looking at for this.
Okay. So that being said, I'm not super into statistic of baseball, knowing everything that's going on. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I really don't. This movie, though, I felt like I was still able to follow the movie. It did a good job. It didn't downright explain everything to me, which is okay, but I was still able to follow the movie, which is my first real big compliment I want to give this movie. I like to think of this movie as it's a layered storytelling, right? And what I mean by that when I say layered storytelling is there's something for everyone for this movie, right? There's something for people who are into baseball history. There's something that you can get out of that. There's something for the storytelling aspect of it, for the people that love the drama, the behind the scenes. There's something for the person who loves innovation, right? You see someone overcome an antiquated system to innovate for the future. There's something that I think everyone, while you may not like everything that's in this movie or necessarily be the most informed about it, I think it does a good enough job to where you understand the movie overall.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can definitely get something out of that. And going into that, I really want to talk about the actors, right? The biggest compliment I can give this movie is Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is an interesting actor, right? He has a career. He's the pretty boy. He's the guy, in Fight Club and in Glorious Bastards. He's not maybe known for his thematic ability. Brad Pitt is so friggin' multidimensional in this movie. It blew my mind, to be quite honest with you, to show he jumps from, I forgot it was Brad Pitt. I'll be 1,000% with you. And that's not easy to do with such a huge actor, with such a stigma as Brad Pitt. I was able to see him happy, able to see him sad, anger, like the sheer anger he shows in some of these scenes is just like, it's kind of riveting, and you're just like, you get invested in his story.
Oh yeah. Like when he's the anger, like you could see, like just when he's walking through the locker room after that loss,
right? And
he hears these guys like just singing and joking around, and it gets him frustrated because he's thinking about how much hard work he does, how much time he's taken away from his daughter and stuff,
right,
to do this stuff. And he's walking in there, and they're all happy about a loss, and it makes him think like, hey, I don't want this kind of attitude here.
No, and it's just the facets of his performance. He's very subdued through a lot of the movies. You don't really see him. You see him be very. He's a very energetic character, which I think you have to be a general manager, especially when they have the trades going on and he has to negotiate things. He has to be that at another level as far as his energy, but at the same time, his emotions are very subdued. Like, he doesn't interact with the players till later on. He starts to interact more. And you see even more behind his character when you go into his history, as I guess, again, I can't speak for this, but based on what the movie's telling me, not many former players become general managers. I feel like that's not a common thing. That's what they said, they hint at it in the movie where they say, oh, you want to become a scout, and then I guess he becomes a scout and elevates himself to become a general manager. But through his failings, it's interesting because he has such a disdain for baseball, but he still has such a dramatic love for the sport too. It's like it's like a drug for him almost, the sport. He hates it. He knows he shouldn't be doing it, or he has no business being there, but he still loves it at the same time. Especially some of the more quiet scenes where he's just sitting there listening to the game. He turns it on and off constantly, right? Like, he thinks he's gonna jinx it by just being involved. He turns like the radio on and off or the TV on and off. He's like working out, right? There's a scene he's working out where he's watching the game. He's just got all this anger towards, like, it's just anger towards baseball because he doesn't want to watch it or be a part of it, but he knows he's good at his job at the same time.
Well, yeah, I think it's a weird thing where like he almost hated his job. He hated his job so much
Mm-hmm.
that he couldn't enjoy, even when the victories came, he couldn't enjoy it because they showed back when he was like a kid and he signed his first major league contract
Right.
instead of going to college.
Mm-hmm.
And that messed him up because he couldn't make it and stuff and things just weren't going good for him. And
So,
now it's so close that
mm,
he's doing a good job and then they're like everyone's talking about trying to fire him, so that gets him all fired up again where he thinks back to when he was a kid. He was trying to make the baseball team and he didn't want to feel like that again.
yeah, he couldn't make it, and it's like, I can't make it again, and I have nothing else to turn back on. And
Yeah.
it's also interesting because it's like he doesn't hate. I don't want to say he hates baseball. He hates what baseball has become more than anything else. I think he hates the money practice, the money ball, literally, that they're playing. He hates what it become, and
Well,
also by hating it, he also became enveloped in it. I think he's more just angry at the system. Just, I think, he gives that speech early on, that little tidbit where he's just like, "Here's the Yankees, here's the poor teams, here's the pile of shit, and then here's us at the bottom," and it's such a gap. I mean, you would know more than I do, but there are gaps between teams in baseball like that, who you
oh
can
yeah.
afford. I mean, you're
Well, that's
not, it's not always guaranteed, right? I mean, I guess there are examples of where maybe not the highest paid team wins the World Series, but your odds are arguably stacked a lot higher if you have that money to spend on those elite players. Jonah Hill plays Peter Brand, very nerdy boy, nerdy boy who loves sports. I don't think he's the inventor of the algorithm. I mean, I was trying to. They mentioned it was somebody else made it, but he comes up with a formula that they can use to find maybe the players that the MLB overlooks.
mm-hmm.
Not overlooks, but they have an algorithm to win, to steal bases and just get to first base, right? Is ultimately like one of the goals is just get to base. That's all.
Get
That's
on
all that
base.
matters. Get on base. And I love that scene too, where he's like, "What are we doing? Getting on base. What are we doing?" Points to him. Oh, me? Getting on base. Again, Jonah Hill was great in this movie. I mean, I can't think of a really. Jonah Hill has some serious, portrayals of acting that he's done in movies. I believe this was probably his most believable. Another where I forgot it was him as well at times. I thought him and Brad Pitt awkwardly had great chemistry together. Not two actors I would have ever put together in a movie, but their chemistry was very believable. And I do like their little banter relationship. It's funny to see how much stock Brad Pitt puts into Jonah Hill. It's almost like this is his final gamble is with Jonah Hill. He's like, all right, I gotta go. I gotta see this through. I gotta see if this works. There has to be another way than what we've been doing, and this is all I got left. I have nothing else to do.
Well, also Jonah Hill says to I think Brad Pitt in one of the scenes, he goes, well, if we're going to do this, we have to do this 100% of the way.
Right.
We can't just go off course because, like, they start losing, and then Brad Pitt's like, well, was this in
Starts
your
freaking out.
algorithm?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it's still going to take some time. You got to let it work, do its work. And he's like, all right. And he has to explain that to, like, other people, too. Like, when he's talking to the scouts in the meeting room, and he's like, they're all saying different players. And he's like, like, I don't have to listen to any of you. And they were like, well, then what are we doing here? Yeah. And he's like, well, I don't really know why you're here.
No, yeah.
But this is what's going to happen. And that's it.
And then eventually he tells Jonah Hill, like, don't explain it. I don't need you to explain it. Just do it. Let's get this done. And again, Jonah Hill was amazing, not to be outdone by, Brad Pitt, of course, steals the show, but Jonah Hill, excellent portrayal in this movie.
I feel like this was one of Jonah Hill's, like, better movies, too.
Yeah.
That he's done. Like, usually in movies, he's like a joke and everything, like a funny guy.
He's the funny man, not this movie, though.
But in this movie, he's just, like, really good, and he seems really believable, too.
Yeah, I really like that. Last actor, I really want to, again, not many other characters I feel like get, some show. Chris Pratt's in this movie, famous from Parks and Rec and Guardians of the Galaxy. He's in this movie. Very small role as a player.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I don't remember seeing him.
Yeah, that was him. That was Star-Lord. That was Mr. Star-Lord himself there. It was very, very early on in his career. He was good. Like I said, they added some dimension to the players. I don't know how... I would argue maybe it wasn't extremely necessary. One of the few times where, I've complained in sports movies where, like, oh, we need these, character developments. This is one of those times where I don't think it was extremely necessary to what was going on.
I think they
did a good job, though.
I think they were only trying to show it where they were trying to make it show it where, like, these are sometimes the hard decisions that these owners need to make and stuff, such as, like, cutting players that have just moved or players with families and stuff and trading them away. I think it was just trying to show that in a little bit. Of, like, what they kind of go through.
Yeah,
like some people can't handle that stuff,
Yeah, and they have a whole scene with which was a good scene too, between Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. Like, Brad Pitt's trying to explain to him how to fire somebody, and he tells him, like, what he's supposed to do, like, don't get involved. And again, good scene.
Just
I have some thoughts on that later,
and then tell him to go this guy.
Yeah, I got some thoughts on that later. But the other actor I want to talk about, Philip Seymour Hoffman's in this movie, who, passed a couple of years after this movie. He plays the coach of the A's. He didn't have a big role, right? I don't think he was super involved, but his role was very strong at the same time, because he played the coach that doesn't want to move on from the form to what's been, to what baseball is. His mind is, you play the game, the traditions that they've had for years. Brad Pitt comes in and tells him, no, this is what we're going to do. And then Philip Seymour Hoffman's kind of on the chopping block. They only gave him like a year renewal contract. So he's like, I got to do what I got to do. I can't be, doing this crazy thing, risking my career. And then towards the end of the movie, he plays Hattenberg, Chris Pratt, and he hits a home run and wins the game to continue the streak. Showing, like, the whole time he's been telling him, play this kid, and he's like, no, I'm not playing Hattenberg, Chris Pratt. I'm not playing him. He's got a pair or whatever, no feeling in his arm or whatever. I don't need him up there. Sure enough, he goes up there, he hits a home run, and wins the game. But
well, I think
I like that. I like his polarizing performance to Brad Pitt. I think is interesting.
Yeah, well, I think, like, his main thing was too that he didn't feel. He wanted more years on his contract, and then he would have done whatever they wanted him to do. But the fact that they were pretty much telling him that this is, like, your last year. So he didn't want his record to be so terrible that when other people were looking at him, they're like, oh, well, look at the job you did here. Well, so that's why he was so against it.
He comments on something like that, isn't it? Where they're talking about, like, oh, I'll put that on my resume or something like that.
Yeah, something about that.
But again, great performance. I don't want that to be overlooked, because he did contribute a decent, again, not a huge role, but I think he was a good foil character for what Brad Pitt, the whole theme, which is something I'm getting into next, where, breaking tradition and innovation. Innovation in any industry is very hard to do, especially when you're on a formula or a path that has worked, arguably. Money in baseball, spending money on the best team, finding the best players, has been the formula, right? That's what scouts are for. They're to find the best people who are best at what positions, not necessarily looking at a different angle or looking at theorems or, equations, but maybe this other method, there's something to it, which, is proven to work to an extent. They had a 20-game win streak, and then 2 years later, the Boston Red Sox did the same thing. But they won. They didn't have a win streak, but they won the World Series using the same formula. So again, maybe it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it is an innovation, and it shows that even in baseball, people are afraid of innovation, just like in anything.
Yeah, definitely.
And I really like that. I think that's very, it's good for people to see. Innovation's hard, and I think this movie does a really good job of just showing, showing the struggle of that innovation.
Yeah, I agree.
But there's two scenes I really do enjoy in this movie. The first scene that made me take more notice, I think, in this movie was the whole trading scene with Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt, where they're going back and forth on 3 different phones and they're trading players, and he's making a backhand deal and he's making another deal. He doesn't even have that player yet to make that deal, and then Jonah Hill seals it and he's freaking out and they're going crazy. That interaction, I think, is just classic, and I can kind of believe that, right? You kind of want to believe that happens behind the scenes, that there's that kind of sports trading going on, that you're making 10 deals ahead when you haven't finished the first one yet, And I really like that. I think that captures a lot of maybe modern baseball today, I would think. I'm not super behind the scenes, but I could see that. My other favorite scene, and I mentioned it earlier, is I love the end of this movie. Brad Pitt just turned down the contract. He gets offered a contract by the Boston Red Sox that would have made him the highest paid general manager in history. It was $2 million, something crazy, whatever it was, for it to be a stinking general manager. He turns it down, and his daughter plays music, and he has a CD, and he puts it in his car, and she's singing him a song. It's a cover song she made by the artist Lenka. It's called The Show. And the lyrics, it's just weird, because you wouldn't think a movie would just kind of end with this, but it kind of tells you everything you need to know, I think, about the ending. Example of the lyrics, I'm just a little bit caught in the middle. Life is a maze. Love is a riddle. I don't know where to go. I can't do it alone. I've tried and I don't know why. It's bringing me down. I know I've got to let it go and just enjoy the show. And ultimately, I think that embodies everything Brad Pitt's character really needed to do. And, he didn't take that big money contract because it would have been a contradiction to everything he's worked for, as far as, trying to build this team out of nothing. And he would just become another player that they're buying up talent. He wanted to try and make his mark somewhere else with limited resources. He really wanted to show, I think, that his experiment works. And it does. And they have that scene too with Jonah Hill, where Jonah Hill shows him the baseball player who's afraid of going to second base. He hits the ball, he runs to first base, and then he's about to run to second, and he freaks out and slides back to first, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Not realizing he hit a home run, which is, it's a little bit on the nose, which is kind of funny. Joey Hill's like, that's a metaphor for what I'm talking to you about. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I just think that's so powerful. And like I said, that end song it really gets you, and the movie just kind of fades out from that end song, and I think it was just a really strong, different, very strong though, very strong, ending.
Yeah, definitely.
Because again, ultimately, that's the most purest form of any relationship he had in the movie, is the one he had with his daughter. He wouldn't connect to anybody else really in the movie, except his daughter was the one thing that was the only non-contaminated thing in his life. I love the scenes with his daughter. I really like those scenes a lot. I think they add a lot to the movie, but that's where we get into my negative with this movie, is it's too long. This movie's 2 hours, 15 minutes, and there's a bunch of scenes. They really needed to go in, take the scissors, and trim the fat, because this movie is way too long, especially for a movie that's mostly, I hate to simplify it to this, it's mostly talking. Right? This movie, they're just talking most of the time. And there's just a lot, and there's long stretches of just dialogue. Some of the scenes are so long, and they feel long at times, and I think that hurts the pacing of the movie. The pacing's kind of all over the place. I feel like we're building up to something, and then we just stop, because we have this long drawn out scene of dialogue. And like you said, it just hurts the pacing dramatically, I think. A mix of footage and film. We talked about this in another review that we had talked about, Miracle, when we were reviewing that movie. I don't like stock footage. I do not like it. And this movie even makes the biggest cardinal sin of them all is it uses both. At times it's using actual footage of a baseball game, and then at times it's blending it with like dramatic interpretations of what happened on the field. Like it's weird because it'll show like the A's playing a game, right? It'll actually be real archival footage of a baseball game, and then it shows the players playing the game, but it's like you're mixing the two together. It distorts the realities to me. Either use all or one or the other. Preferably just use your actors. That's what you're paying them for. Just use that footage. You know what I mean? I felt like it was almost a cost cutting measure for them. Like, oh, we don't have to stack the crowds, and we don't have to put all these crowds in if we just use archive footage. Felt kind of slimy to me. I didn't really. It wasn't necessary.
They could have done like the Goons did and just made cardboard cutouts.
Or you could, just stack your stadium. I mean, I don't think it's hard to get that many extras, especially to go to a fake. I'm sure have Brad Pitt give a speech, you have that thing filled or something. Not a big. Seriously. Again, I just think that took me out of it a little bit. I just that was distracting. That made it feel almost Lifetime movie-ish. Like when you watch like an ID channel, like murder recreation, they'll have like they'll have the footage of like, oh, the news broadcaster outside, then you have a dramatic reenactment. It felt like that at times to me, and it really annoyed me. Again, it could be subjective.
I love that kind of stuff.
I do, but I don't like it in my movies, especially in my movies with that should have a budget. Last thing I want to get into, and again, this is more, I guess, my opinion more than like not. I think there's still, even though I compliment this movie talking about baseball and giving its explanations and whatnot, there's still a bit of a barrier to entry, right? If you don't understand some of the core mechanics of baseball, especially like the whole scoring, the scoring system, the RPIs, everything like that, if you don't understand that, sometimes it is hard to follow at times, especially when there's so many names being thrown around for trading. It can be a little hard to follow. Like, John, I'm sure you had an easier time with it than I did, understanding what they were talking about. But some of the math and stuff they're going through, it didn't really click with me at times. Not because I don't know math, but because I don't maybe know the exact terminology that they're using. Again, it's not a huge deal, but I think it is, it's something that's still there. There is still a bit of a barrier to entry that they could have eased a little bit for people that aren't familiar.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing too. Like, you see in some movies where like movies will have people who understand the movie more,
right?
Because they know more about like the say like when this movie, like if you know more about baseball or like the inside knowledge of baseball,
right?
Maybe you might get more out of it than other stuff.
Yeah.
Where like certain movies you don't have like. Because I feel like you were saying how long this movie was.
Mm-hmm.
So if they started trying to go into more of that, like to help you out more, it would be even longer. And I feel like that would take away from some of it.
Agreed. And I think that's part of the layered, like I taught, and again, I kind of contradict myself in a way because I said it's a layered movie. So maybe that part of the movie is not made for me. It's made for the baseball fans and the people that understand that. But at the same time, I think there's an argument to be made that they can to give a little more. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to help us understand it more. That's all.
100%. Yeah.
Not a super negative, but I think it's relevant, and I think again, I'm more okay with it. I'm not easily like, oh, I'm discouraged, I'm not going to watch this movie. But I think someone who isn't as into, like, maybe has a slight enjoyment of baseball, but isn't into the mechanics necessarily, I think they're going to have a harder time grasping some of the more interesting aspects of this movie. Overall, I think this is a really good movie. It's actually, ironically, this is written by Ann Sorkin, who's the writer of a Social Network, which I will address on this channel. It's actually one of my favorite movies. I see a lot of parallels in the script between the two. I definitely see, they have the same kind of character types and overcoming the story. I don't think this is as strong as Social Network, but I think still an overall really great movie.
Yeah.
So at that point, let's give our final scores. I'm going to give Moneyball a B+. Moneyball's good. It's really good. I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment at it. Again, I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to. If you're interested in baseball statistics and innovations that happen every day in baseball, I think Moneyball's for you. If you're maybe not so much interested in that, you're looking for maybe an interesting story, there's something to be had there. If anything, the highest recommendation I'd give it is just Brad Pitt's performance. I would argue this is one of his best performances of his career, would be in this movie, especially with how different dimensional his acting is at this point. Again, strong recommendation from me. John, where are you at with this movie?
Interesting, because I actually give it a B+ too.
Oh, okay.
I didn't feel like it reaches the A tier of the movies.
Right.
But I felt like it was good enough. It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely one you should check out.
Mm-hmm.
But I also didn't think it was like reached that high top that it could. I felt like you said, some of it was a little bit too long.
Yeah.
That sometimes draws away from different things. And I just thought that, but it had enough really good stuff in it and knowledgeable stuff that like showed things in a real term that I thought was good.
Right, and I can't agree more with, it's funny, we've been agreeing a lot lately on these movies, but yeah, this is something, it was nominated for Best Picture. I know there were some Best Supporting and Best Actor nominations. We are considering doing something in the future about, comparing Academy Award movies. Give us your suggestions if you think that's a good idea, if that's something you'd like us to speak upon it. I'd like to see, what other movies Moneyball was up against when it was nominated for Best Picture. Maybe it did deserve it. Maybe it didn't. Who's to say? But if you're interested in that, let us know in the comments. That's something we'll address. But John, where can the people find us at home?
You can find us on YouTube at TheReelMovieGuys on YouTube. You can we would like you to like our channel. Mm-hmm. We would like you to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see when we upload and stuff. You can also find us at The Reel Movie Guy on Twitter. You can follow us there. Tweet at us, let us know your opinions, stuff. And we're also located on very many podcast platforms, such as...
Yes, for your listening pleasure, we are also available in podcast form at iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Overcast, Breaker, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to give us a listen at any of those fine places. If you already are right now, hey, we greatly appreciate it. Just search Reel Movie Guys, we'll pop right up. Thank you all again so much for joining us for this episode of The Reel Review. My name's Kevin. This guy over here, he's John. We are The Reel Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. And stay tuned for another episode of Real Sports Month as we continue our journey. Play the sports, watch the movies. See you next time.
See ya!